Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh was born in New York City in 1969. And if you're thinking to yourself how the hell a Wild West outlaw could have possibly been born as late as 1969, well, it's because I lied. That's actually when Christian Slater was born. And if it wasn't for Christian Slater's portrayal as Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh in my favorite movie as a kid, Young Guns 2, we might not even be having this conversation. I mentioned my love for the Young Guns movies way back when I talked about Brushy Bill Roberts, but I'll go ahead and say it again. I had the freaking soundtrack, y'all. And to this day, every so often, I'll give it a listen. We played Young Guns at recess. Billy the Kid was always the coolest. Obviously, that's who we all wanted to play. But if I couldn't be Billy, I'd either go with Doc or Chavez. I don't believe I ever played as Arkansas Dave during recess. I don't think anybody did. Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh isn't really anybody's top choice when it comes to outlaws or gunfighters. And after looking into him for this episode, I'm kind of amazed there's not more interest in the dude. But I think I know why. There's just not a whole lot of info on Arkansas Dave, which is surprising. You know, he wasn't just some obscure outlaw that's only semi-famous for riding with Billy the Kid for a short period of time. Not even close. Rudabaugh, if the stories are true, traveled all over the damn Wild West and had more than a few run-ins with other people we've previously discussed on this podcast. Guys like Bat Masterson, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, Johnny Ringo, Pat Garrett, Billy the fucking Kid, etc., as well as being involved in super well-known events. So why the hell isn't Arkansas Dave more popular? And just who the hell was he anyway? Let's find out together in this newest, never say die, and no matter what, don't lose your head episode of Bloody Beaver Podcast. The real David Rudabaugh was probably born on July 14th, 1854 in Fulton County, Illinois. His father was probably killed during the Civil War, and Dave's mother moved the family to Kansas. Well, actually to Ohio, and then back to Illinois, and then to Kansas. And there is speculation that they moved to Kansas because Dave and a friend robbed a train up in Illinois. But I don't know if there's actually any truth to that. And you're going to hear a lot more probablys on this episode. A lot of allegedlys and a lot of I don't knows. To be honest with you, most of Dave's early life is shrouded in mystery. He may or may not have initially left Kansas and followed the cattle trails west to Colorado in the early 1870s. And he may have possibly spent some time in Deadwood, South Dakota, where he did a little bit of stagecoach robbery. Some say he got his start as an outlaw in 1873 when he and mysterious Dave Mather began rustling and robbing on the Texas-Arkansas border. So much speculation, so few reliable sources. What we do know is that sometime around 1876 or so, Rudabaugh joined up with Mike Rourke and Dan DeMint to form what they called the Trio. It was also around this time that he got to know Doc Holliday. Speaking of him and Doc, just like everybody else I've covered on this podcast, we've got to sift through all the bullshit and make-believe stories to get to the likely truth. For instance, it's said that Dave taught Doc Holliday how to shoot, and in return, Holliday taught Rudabaugh the finer points of poker. It's also said that Rudabaugh is the only man that Billy the Kid ever feared. If you go further down the Rudabaugh rabbit hole, you'll find that Arkansas wasn't his only nickname. Some say he was known as Dirty Dave as well, for his refusal to bathe or even brush his damn teeth. The legend goes that the man just did not have a close relationship with soap and water. But here's the thing, as when it comes to much of what's out there on Rudabaugh, there's little to no sources on much of what I just said. But we'll get to that soon enough. Back to what we do know. The trio soon morphed into a bigger gang known as the Rudabaugh-Rourke Gang. Dave and the gang drifted on down to Texas where they participated in various types of thievery, up to and including cattle rustling. But Arkansas Dave really pops up on the Wild West radar in November of 1877. After he and his gang robbed a Santa Fe Railroad construction camp, and a little somebody that went by the name of Wyatt Earp, maybe you've heard of him, was issued an acting commission as a U.S. Deputy Marshal to track Rudabaugh's alleged stinky ass down. Wyatt trailed the man hundreds of miles and finally arrived at Fort Griffin, Texas, only to find that he had barely missed Dave. He visited Shancy's Beehive Saloon where the owner, John Shancy, basically was like, yeah, Dave's been here recently, but I don't know where he's at now. But I know somebody who might. And then directed Wyatt to another one of the saloon's patrons. Another guy y'all may have heard of. His given name was John Henry Holliday, but most people called him Doc. Supposedly, this was the first time Wyatt and Doc ever met. The story goes that Earp was hesitant to talk to Holliday just based on his reputation as a first-class hater of law dogs, but as we all know, the two became lifelong friends. Anyway, Doc, who had recently played cards with Mr. Rudabaugh and evidently didn't care much for the man, let Wyatt know where he thought Dave was headed. There's a great scene in the 1994 movie Wyatt Earp, starring Kevin Costner. Doc, portrayed by Dennis Quaid, says, quote, Dave Rudabaugh is an ignorant scoundrel. I disapprove of his very existence. I considered ending it myself on several occasions, but self-control got the better of me. I don't know why that movie got so much hate, by the way. It bombed at the box office and movie fans and critics alike shit all over it. Came out right after Tombstone, you know, your Aunt Rachel's favorite Western when she's got a bottle and a half of Moscato in her. So that might have something to do with it. It got overshadowed by the arguably much better movie, Tombstone. But I think Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp wasn't too bad. Just watched it a few months ago. It's long, yeah, but still I'll take it over most of the newer westerns. Anyway, who the fuck do I think I am? Siskel and Ebert? Back to the story. Doc's info on Arkansas Dave was right on the money. He and his gang were headed back to Kansas. Earp wired Doc's info to Bat Masterson. You may remember Bat from episode 22 of Bloody Beaver Podcast, and the tip did lead to Rudabaugh's arrest. Once back in Kansas, and now with legendary Bat Masterson fast on his trail, Dave made the mistake of robbing another train, or at least he attempted to. On January 27, 1878, Rudabaugh and 5 other ne'er-do-wells unsuccessfully tried to take down a train near Kinsley, Kansas, allowing Masterson to further pinpoint his location. And within just a matter of days, Arkansas and a buddy named Edgar West were arrested by Sheriff Masterson and a posse, which included John Joshua J.J. Webb. Remember that name, it's going to pop up a lot going forward. Matter of fact, it was Webb who stopped Rudabaugh as he went for his gun, forcing the outlaw to surrender. Shortly thereafter, the other 4 men that took part in the attempted train robbery were also arrested. And Arkansas Dave wasted no time in snitching on his partners. Yep, he turned informant, used the bullshit excuse that he wanted to go straight. As a result of his testimony, Rudabaugh's associates were sent to prison while he went free. There's that famous honor amongst thieves everybody's always talking about. Dave joined up with Bat Masterson and fought for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway in the Railroad Wars that we previously covered back on episode 22. Rudabaugh wouldn't follow the straight and narrow for long, though. He headed for New Mexico and hooked up with some old friends from Kansas who took to calling themselves the Dodge City Gang. Remember Joshua Webb, the guy that helped arrest Rudabaugh? He became a lawman there in Las Vegas, New Mexico around this time. And an unsavory character named Hyman Neal, also known as Hoodoo Brown, became the Justice of the Peace. Gotta do an episode on Hoodoo Brown one of these days. There's a lot to him and I just don't have enough time to really touch on it in this episode. But let me just say that I don't blame him one bit for going by Hoodoo, especially since his real name is Hyman. When your name sounds exactly like the thin membrane that surrounds the opening of the female vagina, it's probably time for a nickname. You know, there's just something about that thin, fleshy tissue that's often broken during sexual intercourse for the first time that just doesn't elicit fear into the hearts of gunfighters and outlaws. At least not like the name Hoodoo. Other members of the Dodge City Gang included mysterious Dave Mather, who Rudabaugh likely got his outlaw career started with, lawman/outlaw Joe Carson, as well as lesser-known guys like Slapjack Bill Nicholson, John Bullshit Jack Pierce, Selman Frank Caddy, and Jordan L. Webb, no relation to Joshua Webb. Basically, they ran the rackets in the town. Hoodoo Brown, Mysterious Dave, J.J. Webb, and Carson in their official capacities as air quote public servants helped cover the tracks of Rudabaugh and the others who were out there stealing with 2 fists. And as much as Arkansas Dave was out there thieving in Las Vegas, he himself would wear a badge at various times as a member of the Dodge City Gang. It was just a crooked-ass town with crooked-ass cops. First, they took over control of the town's gambling operations. And the gambling there in Vegas was thriving. This was also just one of those towns where all kinds of bad characters would pass through. There's that one legend, probably not very true, but still fun to talk about, that Jesse James invited Billy the Kid to join up with his gang as they dined together there in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Even Doc Holliday stayed for a while plying his trade. And although he knew and associated with many members of the Dodge City Gang, he himself was never a member. And I'm guessing he wasn't too awfully concerned about the fact that he helped get Arkansas Dave arrested a couple of years before. You know, Doc was about 30 years old at this point and in his prime. And by prime, I mean he was deadly as fuck. I doubt Dave wanted to open up that dance with a dying, unpredictable gambler who had nothing to lose. In August of 1879, a stagecoach was robbed. A few weeks later, another one went down. In both of these cases, men were arrested, but nobody got convicted. Probably because the so-called law was on their side. Funny how that works. In October of 79, a train was robbed. The masked men making off with $2,000, $50,000 in today's money, as well as 3 pistols, and oddly enough, all of the lanterns on the train. Yes, the lanterns. And that little tidbit of information just baffles the shit out of me. I can't figure out why. You know, was it nighttime and they stole the lanterns to keep the passengers and crew in the dark so they could make a clean getaway? Or did somebody just have some sort of weird lantern fetish? All right, come on, Slapjack, we got the money, let's go. Wait just a second. You see that lantern over there? That there's the 58 Johnson model. Look at it, Dave. No, damn it, we don't have enough time. Let's get the hell out of here. Not without the lanterns. Oh, Jesus. Okay, Tim, would you please help Slapjack gather up all the stupid lanterns so we can get the fuck out of here, please? You know, I think it went something like that. Arkansas Dave would later plead guilty to this robbery, as well as previous stage robberies and various other crimes during his time in Las Vegas. But more on that later. For now, I'm just giving a quick overview of the Dodge City Gang activities and how Dave played a part. The town of Las Vegas was getting a pretty bad reputation by this point, and the normal law-abiding citizens were starting to get fed up. Shootings are of frequent occurrence in that remote region, one newspaper reported. Another lamented that in the span of just 1 month, 29 men were killed in and around Las Vegas. Then something interesting happened in late January of 1880. 4 guys, T.J. House, James West, John Dorsey, and William Randall were sashaying through town, being loud and looking for trouble. And I'm guessing they might have been under the influence of that devil's liquor, some of that Who Hit John. City Marshal and Dodge City Gang member Joe Carson entered the Close and Patterson Variety Hall and asked the men to check their guns. Like many western towns, there was an ordinance against carrying a pistol within city limits. The men refused and gunplay ensued. Marshal Carson was killed immediately. Part-time outlaw and deputy, Mysterious Dave Mather, killed Randall and shot James West in return. The other two, House and Dorsey, managed to escape. And this little incident caused the Dodge City boys to take a time out from terrorizing the law-abiding citizens and actually enforce the law, like they were supposed to be doing. They, Arkansas Dave, J.J. Webb, and 5 others, tracked Dorsey and House down and forced them to surrender, which they did, but only after they were assured that they wouldn't be strung up by no lynch mob, which was total bullshit. Hey guys, I know I said if y'all peacefully surrender, that I'd make sure you were given a fair trial. But as it turns out, I did have my fingers crossed behind my back when I said that. Whoopsies. What are you going to do? So they only spent a few hours in the Las Vegas jail before a vigilante mob, I'm sure under total approval of the Dodge City Gang, removed the prisoners to the plaza with the intent to hang them from a windmill, which they would have done had not Joe Carson's widow taken matters into her own hands, shooting House, Dorsey, and the wounded James West dead before they could be strung up. That's one bad bitch right there. I guess that mob justice just wasn't quick enough for Mrs. Carson. Mysterious Dave was Carson's replacement as marshal, and J.J. Webb was made Las Vegas policeman. I find this whole situation interesting as hell. Dave Mather and Webb were both working for Hoodoo, and they were on the take. Yet they still enforced the law when the mood struck them. Or did they? Did they only enforce the law when it looked like they were going to turn a profit? In March of 1880, a man named Mike Killiher was in a Las Vegas saloon having a drink. He was also in possession of a firearm. Jimmy? J.J. Webb attempted to disarm the man, but Killiher refused, placing his hand on the butt of his pistol. Before he could draw, Webb put 3 bullets in the man, 1 in the head and 2 in the chest. Sounds pretty cut and dry. Police officer confronts man. Man goes for gun. Man dies. The end. Only problem is this man in particular had $1,900 on his person. A lot of fucking money back in 1879. More money than a lot of people make in 1 year. The other problem was that somehow that money made it into the pocket of Hoodoo Brown, the Las Vegas mob boss / justice of the peace / mayor / coroner. Quick side note, you've probably seen all the great mafia movies, The Godfather, Goodfellas, Casino, Donnie Brasco, Mean Girls. Back in the day, the mob was extremely powerful in the United States. They were more than likely responsible for getting JFK elected, and they also likely took part in his assassination. Then in the 1980s, we saw John Gotti rise to power, the Teflon Don. But it's 2020 now. The mafia doesn't really exist anymore, right? Wrong. Organized crime has always and will always exist. It doesn't just have to come in the form of an Italian gangster in a tracksuit, bitching about who ate the gabagool in the fridge. As long as people have an appetite for certain vices, gambling, prostitution, drugs, alcohol, whatever the fuck, there's gonna be people willing to supply these vices and profit from them. That's part of why prohibition doesn't work. That's why we outlaw drugs and how the cartels took over fucking Mexico. Look, they had gangsters in ancient Greece. There's wise guys in Istanbul. Someone right now is controlling all of the vice in some small fishing village in Alaska. And yes, even the Wild West had gangsters and organized crime. And the Dodge City Gang certainly fits the bill. They supplied the vice and they profited from it, and the only laws they enforced were the ones that lined their pockets. It was only a matter of time before the average Joes of Las Vegas, the small-time ranchers, the store owners, the stable operators, the bankers, the family men, got fed up from being victimized. The blatant killing of Killiher just to take his money was the last straw. That could have happened to any of them. And if they didn't do something, it very well could happen to them next. The Las Vegas citizens armed themselves, formed a vigilante committee, and had the following posted in the newspaper. Quote, "The citizens of Las Vegas have tired of robbery, murder, and other crimes that have made this town a byword in every civilized community. They have resolved to put a stop to crime. If in attaining that end they have to forget the law and resort to a speedier justice than it will afford. All such characters are therefore hereby notified that they must either leave this town or conform themselves to the requirements of the law, or they will be summarily dealt with. The flow of blood must and shall be stopped in this community, and the good citizens of both the old and new towns have determined to stop it, even if they have to hang by the strong arm of force every violator of the law in this country. Signed, Vigilantes." J.J. Webb was arrested by, I'm assuming, the non-corrupt county sheriff, and the vigilantes did come after him, but they were held off by Arkansas Dave and the rest of the Dodge City outfit. A couple months later, Rudabaugh burst into the sheriff's office in an attempt to free Webb, and although he killed a jailer in the process, he was unsuccessful. With Webb still in jail, sentenced to death, and an angry mob looking to string him up, Hoodoo Brown, Arkansas Dave, Mysterious Dave Mather, and all the others wisely decided their time in Las Vegas had come to an end, and they headed out for friendlier pastures. Keep in mind that Rudabaugh is now wanted by authorities, not just for all those robberies he'd been committing, but also for the death of that Las Vegas jailer. He and another member of the Dodge City Gang, Tom Pickett, moseyed on down to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, where they joined up with Billy the Kid and his gang. Oh yeah, here we go. Time for some Young Guns action. Regulators! Mount up. Rudabaugh was present on November 30th, 1880, when Billy the Kid and gang rode into White Oaks, New Mexico. Remember that scene from Young Guns 2? Billy, Rudabaugh, and the rest in the saloon, catching up with the sexy Jane Greathouse, portrayed by actress Jenny Wright? The boys then later get confronted by a mob led by Deputy Carlisle. Carlisle ends up dead and the gang flees. Later on, Sheriff Pat Garrett shows up and Jane tells him off, and he burns down her saloon, calling it the Devil's Den, saying he's protecting the civic virtues of the citizens of Lincoln County. "I'll show them what my civic virtues look like," Jane angrily proclaims as she proceeded to strip down butt-ass naked and mount a horse on Main Street. "White Oaks, you can kiss my ass," she yelled as she rode out of town in nothing but her birthday suit and some riding boots. Man, Jane Greathouse. That lady and that scene fueled many a fantasy for 12-year-old me. I'll just leave it at that. But in reality, it didn't really go down that way. Rudabaugh and Billy did visit White Oaks, but they didn't stay too long. They got into it with the deputy sheriff there, and the locals came to his aid and ran the outlaws out of town. They then hid out at the ranch of Jim Greathouse. Jim, not Jane. The real-life Greathouse was a man and a rancher, not a sultry, soiled dove like on Young Guns 2. The death of James Carlisle wasn't too off the mark, though. He agreed to head inside the house in an attempt to negotiate with the outlaws and hopefully get them to surrender. The posse held the rancher Greathouse outside as collateral. Inside the house, Billy was allegedly drinking pretty heavily, forcing Carlisle to drink as well, making the man drunker than hell by noon. The posse waiting outside grew impatient. They waited for hours and hours and finally yelled out that they were going to shoot Greathouse if the gang didn't surrender. Billy and company didn't believe him and continued drinking. Eventually, a shot was fired by a nervous posse member, and a crash was heard from a window as a man came stumbling out of the house, and he was immediately gunned down by the posse. That man was Deputy Carlisle. The posse had just killed their own man. Upon realizing what they had done, they abandoned the siege and broke for home, allowing Billy, Rudabaugh, and all the others to escape. And much like the fictional Jane Greathouse's saloon, the real-life Jim Greathouse's ranch was later burned down by an angry mob as retribution. By the way, I've read that James Carlisle was a deputy sheriff, and I've also read that he was a local blacksmith that was just respected by both sides, the normal citizens and Billy's crew. They liked and trusted the man, and that's why they asked for him. So I don't know if Carlisle was a blacksmith or a lawman or what, or if he was both and just temporarily deputized at the time. Carlisle was present with J.W. Bell. Remember Bell? Yoo-hoo, Bell, I'll make you famous. Just a couple weeks prior when they surprised and attacked Billy's gang at Coyote Springs. Anyways, by this point, Billy's being hunted down by Pat Garrett. And the rest, as they say, is history. Pat and his posse caught up with Billy, Rudabaugh, and the others as they holed up in a cabin near Stinking Springs, New Mexico. Gang member Charlie Bowdry stepped in front of a window and was shot dead. Sort of like how they showed Doc Scurlock being killed in the movie. You remember the scene? Doc got mad at Billy. "You rode a 15-year-old boy straight to the grave, and the rest of us, straight to hell." He stands up, he levers in around and points the rifle at the kid. "William H. Bonney, you are not a god." Billy slowly stands up, facing Doc. "Why don't you pull that trigger and find out?" Then Scurlock attempts to leave and gets shot by Garrett's posse. And yeah, right about now you're wondering why I'm not a professional thespian. Well, maybe it's because I'm a little bit too good for Hollywood. You ever think about that? Anyway, Charlie's dead and Billy and Arkansas Dave try to make a stand, but it's no use. The siege would last an entire day, but finally Rudabaugh raised the white flag and the outlaws surrendered. They knew they couldn't shoot their way out of this one. This was on December 23rd, 1880. Arkansas Dave was extradited back to Las Vegas to stand trial, where he attempted to avoid the death penalty by pleading guilty to his previous train and stagecoach robberies. This attempt was unsuccessful, and he was sentenced to hang by the neck till he be dead. No word on whether or not he told the judge to go to hell. He was then thrown into the Old Town Jail there in Las Vegas to await his execution. The same jail he had previously stormed and attempted to bust J.J. Webb out of. Speaking of Webb, he's still there in the jail, so they got to have a little bit of a reunion. Billy the Kid was taken to a jail in Lincoln, New Mexico, where he killed the aforementioned Deputy Bell along with Deputy Bob Ollinger. Hello, Bob. Goodbye, Bob. And was able to escape. Less than 3 months later, on July 14th, 1881, he'd be killed by Pat Garrett at just 21 years of age. Unless you're delusional, in which case you know for a fact that he lived to be a 90-year-old under the assumed name Brushy Bill Roberts. Sorry for all the Young Guns references. I'm assuming that most of y'all that have seen the movies get it. If not, and you're wondering why I keep saying shit like, I'll make you famous and goodbye, Bob, just watch the damn movies. They're short on historical facts, but long on entertainment. Kind of like me. Yeah, or not. Back to Arkansas Dave. So now he's just rotting away in jail. Probably wishing he hadn't gone wrong. But he wasn't ready to give up the ghost just yet. And as determined as they were to hang him, he was equally, if not more so, determined not to stick his damn head in a noose. In September of 1881, Dave, Webb, and 2 other inmates named Duffy and Wilson attempted to break out of jail. The attempt was a failure, though, and Duffy ended up deader than Dick's headband. Rudabaugh remained undeterred. A couple months later, they tried another escape, and this time they pulled it off. They chipped a hole through the stone wall and made a successful getaway. He'd never be jailed again that I'm aware of, and he would never be brought to justice for killing that jailer. Eventually, Arkansas Dave would drift on down to Old Mexico, but some claim that before he did, he made a detour to a little town called Tombstone, where he joined up with the Clantons as the famous Clanton-Earp feud was kicking off. Matter of fact, Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh is suspected by some of being involved in the attempted assassination of Virgil Earp and the successful assassination of Morgan Earp, which led to Wyatt Earp's famous vendetta ride. He was also possibly involved in the gunfight at Iron Springs where Wyatt killed Curly Bill Brocious. And if true, that's fucking crazy. And also why I can't believe he's not more well known than he is. Arkansas Dave, man, the dude spent time in Deadwood, allegedly, Dodge City. He knew and associated with famous figures like Doc Holliday, Bat Masterson, Mysterious Dave Mather. He was hunted by Wyatt Earp and Pat Garrett, rode with Billy the Kid, one of the most famous outlaws ever, possibly fought with the Cowboys in Tombstone. This dude's like the Forrest Gump of the Wild West. He finds himself in all sorts of historical situations, but nobody knows any fucking thing about him. After escaping the wrath of Wyatt Earp in Arizona, Dave finally made his way to Mexico. At this point, let me just take a time out and go ahead and reiterate that there's almost no reliable information online about Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh. Most of what is out there is just copy and pasted from Wikipedia. A lot of blog posts sharing the same information, just slightly reworded. Did he or did he not spend time in Tombstone? Was he really known as Dirty Dave? Did he teach Doc Holliday how to shoot? Was he really feared by Billy the Kid? These are my questions. Here's what we know for sure about Arkansas Dave. He was an outlaw who spent time in Dodge City. He did get arrested by Bat Masterson, and he did take part in the Railroad War. He was most definitely a member of the Dodge City gang in Las Vegas, and he definitely rode with Billy the Kid, and he was arrested by Pat Garrett. These are irrefutable facts to me at least, that make him a pretty prolific outlaw. Did he spend time in the Black Hills of South Dakota robbing stagecoaches as a young man? I have no idea. Couldn't find any sources for that. Did he fight on the side of the Clantons in Tombstone? Likewise, no sources that I could find. When I try to look up who killed Morgan Earp and who shot Virgil Earp, the usual suspects are listed. Billy Clanton, possibly Johnny Ringo, but no Arkansas Dave. The only place I can even find Rudabaugh's name associated with Tombstone is on the short bios and blog posts that are dedicated solely to Arkansas Dave. I'm not finding any sources that are primarily focused on the Earps or Tombstone that mention, oh, by the way, there's a notorious desperado named Dave Rudabaugh that joined up with the Cowboys. If you're more interested in that particular chapter of Dave's life, I'd suggest contacting the museum curator in Tombstone, or maybe one of the numerous authors who covered the boomtown. Find out if they ran across any sources mentioning Rudabaugh when they did their research. Are there any old Tombstone newspapers mentioning Arkansas Dave? Any memoirs? Is the whole Tombstone connection just a figment of someone's imagination? Or is there a nugget of truth in there? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find out. Some of the information I found comes from a book called Tough Towns, written by retired Colonel Robert Barr Smith. I was hoping to contact the author and pick his brain, but unfortunately, when I was looking into contacting him, I found out that he passed away in 2017. So rest in peace, Colonel Smith. On writing about Rudabaugh and joining up with Billy the Kid, Smith writes, Rudabaugh fit right in. If the Kid and Charlie Bowdry and Tom O'Folliard were tough and mean, Rudabaugh was tougher and meaner in spades. According to an old friend of the Kid's, if ever there was a living man the Kid was afraid of, it was Rudabaugh. Other old timers said the same thing. The Kid said one never dared talk to him as he did to Charles Bowdry and the rest of Billy's gang. So there you go. Maybe try to pick up a copy of Tough Towns and find out if Colonel Smith listed his sources. As far as him being called Dirty Dave and avoiding soap and water, I found two descriptions of Rudabaugh, both from newspaper articles printed during his time, and both vastly different. The first article I found was from an 1882 copy of the Denver Tribune that describes Rudabaugh as follows, quote, he is thick-set and athletic in build, is about 5 feet 9 inches in height. He is suave and gentlemanly in his deportment. Gosh dang, other than the 5'9" part, it's starting to sound a little bit like me. He has brown hair, just like me, hazel eyes and a heavy mustache, a shade lighter than that of his hair. Okay, not like me. I have blue eyes, no mustache. He is fluent in speech. Okay, definitely doesn't sound like me anymore. Mildly argumentative in disposition, and has that peculiar faculty of being able to obtain news and facts where others would fail. This is a faculty which he uses advantageously in his search for express news on the railroads. He's as brave as a lion and a natural-born organizer. He gathers a gang and has it in working condition within a few days. He is always clear-headed, has the cunning of a fox, and never falls into a position of unnecessary danger through the recklessness of bravery or dissipation. Wow, okay, sounds like Arkansas Dave cut a pretty dashing figure. Nothing in that description refers to him as being dirty. However, the Las Vegas Gazette ran an article in late December of 1880, when Dave was brought back to stand trial, saying that he, quote, looks and dresses about the same as when in Las Vegas, apparently not having made any raids upon clothing stores. His face is weather-beaten from long exposure. This is the only noticeable difference. Rudabaugh inquired somewhat anxiously in regard to the feeling of the community and was told it was very strong against him. He remarked that the papers published exaggerated reports on the depredations of kids' party in the lower country. It was not half as bad as had been reported. So there you go. Make of those two articles what you will when it comes to his cleanliness habits. Okay, so whatever became of Arkansas Dave? Well, like I said earlier, it's widely accepted that he fled to Mexico. Once in Mexico, Rudabaugh is said to have hired on as a cowboy and sure enough went back to his old ways of rustling. Just to make a little bit of money on the side. Pro tip. When attempting to make money on the side, it's probably not a good idea to steal that money from your boss, which is what he did. Not a very good work ethic, B. This, of course, resulted in Rudabaugh being fired. Imagine that. I'm surprised the Vaqueros didn't just string his ass up. In early 1886, he made his way to Parral, Mexico, in the state of Chihuahua. And from all accounts I've read, basically set to bullying the entire town. Getting drunk, gambling, acting a fool. Eventually, a couple of Mexicans got tired of his shit and called him out on it, accusing him of cheating at cards, which he was probably doing. The three ended up throwing down, going for their guns, but only Arkansas Dave was left standing. The two Mexicans lay dead at his feet. One shot through the heart, the other through the head. And that's not bad shooting. Dave then, very wisely, chose to leave the scene. He stepped outside and searched for his horse. But then something funny happened. He couldn't find the horse. It was almost as if somebody didn't want him to leave. So he did something stupid. He headed back to the saloon. One account said that as he headed back towards the cantina, the streets were strangely deserted. And as he stepped inside the building, all the lights were snuffed out. If that's true, he must have known, as soon as he walked into that darkened room, that he was fucked. Which he was, by the way. He was riddled with bullets, dying instantly. Almost reminds me of that scene from Goodfellas when Joe Pesci walked into that empty basement. As soon as it registered, you saw the light bulb flick. He knew he was dead. He barely got out that oh no when that bullet entered his brain. Is this what Arkansas Dave experienced walking into that darkened cantina? Did he know his time was up, or did it take him completely by surprise? The citizens of Parral then decapitated Rudabaugh, placed his head on a pole, and paraded it around town. Whoa, talk about losing your head over a card game, right? Ho, zing! If you do a Google image search of Arkansas Dave, it's not too hard to find a picture of his decapitated head. Cowboy hat still on, stuck on a pole. There's another picture of his head being held by one of the Mexican citizens. Pretty graphic pictures, so if you've got a queasy disposition, maybe skip checking them out. The story goes that they kept Dave's head on that stake for a few weeks until it started rotting pretty badly, so they removed it, placed it on the ground, and took turns defecating on it. That's actually what I read. I'm not making it up. They took turns taking shits on his severed head. Is this true? I have no idea. Was Arkansas Dave even killed in Mexico? There's another story that says otherwise. Some claim, and by some I'm referring to random anonymous people on the internet, that Rudabaugh left Mexico with a herd of cattle headed to Montana, where he lived a normal life, married, and fathered 3 daughters. Later he died, a destitute alcoholic in Oregon in 1928. Is there any truth to this claim? I fucking doubt it. Like a lot of this other stuff, I couldn't find any source. Just literally that same sentence I just read, copied and pasted on various blogs. As far as the pictures go of Dave Rudabaugh, there's that famous one you see everywhere. It's on his Wikipedia page, as well as the Find a Grave page. Kind of an angry looking guy, dark hair and mustache. Well, that's not him. As far as I can tell, there's no verified picture of Arkansas Dave. That, of course, doesn't stop douchebags from buying old photos they find at antique shops and stating otherwise. There's a really good video I saw recently that can be found on YouTube titled, "This Is Not Dave Rudabaugh" by Corey Recko, Recko. I'll put a link to it on this episode's description. It's only like 5 minutes long, but it sheds a lot of light on the issue of fake pictures. I spoke very briefly with Corey via Twitter, and he said that while he hasn't researched the 2 photos of the decapitated head and doesn't know the history behind them, he has heard from a reliable source that they may actually be photos from the Mexican Revolution. If y'all remember when I interviewed Dan Buck way back when, he's written about these fake photos as well. And I'll go ahead and link his article, Adventures in Wonderland, Identifying Old West Photos, in this description as well. Lots of good info there. Okay, so as far as any other sources on Arkansas Dave, holy shit, are they scarce. If you do a search on Amazon for Arkansas Dave Rudabaugh related books, the first result is Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. Good book, I own it, but there's not a damn thing in it about Arkansas Dave. I was able, though, to find a book called Dirty Dave Rudabaugh, Feared by Billy the Kid, on Amazon, written by John Derrig, Derrig. There are currently 4 used and new copies available for $5.95 if you're interested. 2 out of 5-star rating, though, so not looking too good. Here's one review. Fast delivery, space, comma, as described, space, period. Great Xmas present, 4 out of 5 stars. Reviews like this chat my fucking hide. First of all, why do you psychopaths put spaces before your punctuation marks? Someone fucking conjure Freud back to life and let him figure out that shit. Second, the fast delivery has zero to fucking do with the book. When you review something on Amazon, you're not reviewing Amazon on their shipping ability. You're reviewing the actual product. Yeah, I bought a knife on Amazon. Awesome knife, came razor sharp, amazing quality, but the box was caved in and it came a few days late, so I'm only giving it 4 out of 5 stars. It's in eBay, people. I swear there ought to be some sort of requirements on being able to post shit online. I don't know, maybe not. I doubt my dumb ass will be able to meet those requirements. It also gets me that his whole fucking review is positive. Great Xmas present. Fast delivery, as described, but only 4 out of 5 stars. Why not give him all 5 stars? Was there something that made it bad? Why didn't you mention it? All right, getting myself worked up here. So here's another review on the Dirty Dave book, and one that sums up why I probably won't be reading it anytime soon. Amazon user Stony Monday says, it appears that the author, Mr. Derrick, turned on the internet, typed in Dave Rudabaugh, and copied everything down he could find and presented it in his book. Whoa there, Stony Monday. You mean the exact same way I did research on this episode? Okay, fair enough, carry on. There are 121 pages, and the entire life story of Rudabaugh is covered in just 15 pages. Dave is reported to be a stage robber and a psychopathic, bloodthirsty killer, but the author gives no reference to any specific time, dates, or locations. The rest of the book is full of photographs of Western towns, guns, gambling equipment, and prostitutes, and a photo of Wyatt Earp along with his friends, which is known as the Dodge City Police Commission, only Mr. Derrick labeled it the Hoodoo Brown Gang. There are a few more tidbits about Dirty Dave, and then we hear a little bit about Billy the Kid, Pat Garrett, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, prostitutes, and a few other Western characters. The real killer for me was Chapter 8, entitled A Fable. It is the author's attempt to write a story about a conversation between Billy, Dave, his wife Bertha, and John Webb. Poorly written and pure nonsense. If you really want to learn about Dave Rudabaugh, look somewhere else, like Bloody Beaver Podcast. Okay, no, I added that last part. And fair enough. Even the cover of the book is the fake picture of Arkansas Dave. So it looks like very little research was put into the book, kind of like this podcast. But if any of you are really interested in Rudabaugh and really want to go deep and find out more info, I'm positive it can be done. Just not by me. Here's where I'd start off if I had all the time and money in the world, though. First, I'd get online and check out his family name. From what I can tell, his mother was almost certainly Susan Rudabaugh. No idea what her maiden name was. She's buried there in the Greenwood Cemetery in Eureka, Kansas. Dave's father may have been named John, and he may have had a brother named Joseph and a sister named Ida. And that's the information I can find from the 1860 census that I believe is the Rudabaugh family we're talking about. Follow that rabbit hole, start emailing people who may be descendants, see if they have any information. And then you're just going to have to go and actually travel to some of these places. You're going to have to travel to Tombstone, to Dodge City, to Las Vegas, New Mexico, and start looking in libraries, the old newspapers. Or if you can find them online, you can get them that way. And like I said earlier, just contacting some of the authors that have already done the research. But as far as me, that's all I've got on Arkansas Dave. I really hope somebody with more brains and more free time than I have will revisit this guy sometime in the future and unearth some more information. I guarantee you it's out there. It's just waiting to be found. All right, I'd like to give a special shout out this episode to Manuel Davia. ¿Cómo estás, abuelo? Mi español es mierda. It's an honor that you're listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Shout out to my friends on YouTube. CW, Henrik, Too Slow, Creatures of Darkness, MMA, Cameron, Fat Mick, Pete from Scotland, Bill from Texas out there making cabinets, Baldy Roddy, Raymond, Eric S., Davey, Duke 2020. And if I forgot somebody, sorry. I've got a strong back but a soft brain. Thank you, Alex, Warren, and Deanna for your recent emails. Very much appreciated. Shout out to Gully Bull, who for some reason is stalking my YouTube comments and recently left this gem of a message. Quote, pitiful history lesson, racist terminology, F you Texan cunt. All right. You spelled history and cunt wrong, cocksucker. But other than that, love you too. I also like to give a shout out to those of you who follow my Kit Carson series on Patreon. John, Pat, Hank, and Bat Chain Masterson. New Patreon episode will be available each and every Monday morning at the ass crack of dawn. And the feet pics as well as the bukkake video should be available soon. So if y'all are interested, head on over there. Link in the description. I was totally just kidding about the feet pic and bukkake video, by the way. Or am I? Only one way to find out, okay? So that's it and that's that. If y'all have any more information on Arkansas Dave I didn't cover, please share it with me at bloodybeaverpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to email me at any time at the same address. Keep those suggestions coming and keep coming back for more. Got a lot of episodes lined up. Got a very obscure Wild West badass that I just recently learned about I'm going to be covering. Not going to tell you who yet. It's going to be a surprise. I'm also working on an episode covering the gunfight in Newton, Kansas. I want to cover Chief Joseph soon. Recently downloaded a book on Audible about him. I'm absolutely going to cover Kingfisher for my man Manuel. Kingfisher's one of those guys that you think of when you think gunfighter. Texas-born guy too, so I'm going to have a lot of fun looking into him. All right, y'all, that's it for this episode. Stay safe out there. Stay away from left-handed people as well as twins and natural redheads. The world's a scary enough place as it is without inviting all that ojo into your life. And do yourself a favor, trust me on this one, don't go down to Chihuahua, Mexico and go walking in any dark cantinas. Not unless you're ready to become a donkey's bitch.